Thank you so much for joining us today on Connect and Collaborate, where we come together each day to introduce you to our network of business and community leaders and to discuss important issues that impact business in Colorado and the region. I'm Tammy Schaefer, your on-air producer, and this week on Connect and Collaborate, we're focusing on tax and fiscal issues that impact business here in Colorado and also on the national level. And today I'm pleased to be talking with Paul Archer. He is with the Coalition to Simplify Colorado Sales Tax. Paul, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And Paul, you're the treasurer for Simplify Colorado Sales Tax, but you're also a business owner. You're with Automated Business Products.
Correct.
So you know the ins and outs of business here in Colorado on a personal level, don't you?
Right.
So tell us a little bit about the Coalition to Simplify Colorado Sales Tax. What's it all about, and why is it necessary?
Okay. So I guess I'll give you some background, Tammy. The coalition was legally formed in January of 2015.
Okay.
The participants in the coalition, the leaders of the coalition, were active well before that, but we felt like we needed to come together in a legal, formal advocacy structure.
Sure.
Where we could recruit board members and raise money and really push this agenda of simplifying Colorado sales tax. My personal background is I'm a small business owner. I own Automated Business Products in Colorado. We are a Lanier and Kyocera multifunction printer and printer dealer. We do business basically from Colorado Springs down to Canyon City, or up to Fort Collins and up into the mountains. We have currently 43 home rule sales tax licenses.
43 sales tax licenses.
43 sales tax licenses. So a business like ours, where we deliver services to the customer at their location, we deliver product to the customer at their location, and there are a lot of businesses like us. Anyone in our industry, anyone in the IT business, anyone in the office supply business, anyone in the food service business, anyone in the landscaping, construction business, the car business, all of us have to collect and remit sales tax for the location where our customers are located.
Because you're taking your business to the customer when you go to deliver a copier.
Correct.
Those kinds of supplies.
Right.
Okay.
So if I owned a retail store in Arvada, for example, I'd have one, and customers came in and bought their product in my store and left from there. I'd have one
Then
sales
it's
tax
one
license.
location, one point of sale.
Yeah, I'd have a City of Arvada license, and I'd have a State of Colorado license. In a business like ours, and there's thousands of us, we have to have a sales tax license for the state of Colorado, and then we have to have a sales tax license for every home rule city in which we do business. So for us, that's at this current count, 43 home rule cities. Those home rule cities all have individual licensing, individual remittance, individual inspection, individual rules and definitions, and typically individual rates. Now, frankly, the rates are the simplest thing that we deal with, but what's very complex is keeping up with all the licenses, keeping up with all the remittance, keeping up with all the different rules. For our business, it's about a day and a half per month to 2-day process for one of my key people just to do sales tax.
Really?
Yeah, so just to do sales tax is a day and a half to 2-day process. Now, one of our other...
Per month.
One of our other founding board members, American Furniture Warehouse, who has 14 stores, I think 12 or 13 of those stores are in Colorado, and they deliver all over the state. So they would have 70 licenses.
So wherever they deliver is where the tax is?
Wherever they deliver is where the tax goes.
Oh.
So there are 70 home rule cities in Colorado, and each home rule city has constitutionally the right to set sales tax rates, sales tax rules, to have licensing, collection, and so on. So American Furniture Warehouse would have 70 licenses plus the state of Colorado license. And they're constantly trying to figure out where a certain address is, to show you even more complexity.
Is that like under zip code then? Like, where your tax rate's going to be? Is it by zip code? Like, how would you identify it?
Well, you really have to identify it down to the address, because let's take the city of Aurora. The city of Aurora is in 3 different counties.
Oh.
And because the city of Aurora is in 3 different counties, you have different rates and different taxing entities across the city of Aurora. So just to say you're in the city of Aurora doesn't mean that the tax rate's X and the rules around that are Y.
Right. And then in the other county, it's X plus 2 or
correct,
whatever. So bottom line, it's really complicated.
It's really complicated for business. So American Furniture Warehouse has 2.5 full-time employees who only do sales tax compliance. And really that is a regulatory burden that's just extreme. We've talked to a lot of national companies who've been involved with our coalition, and they tell us typically that Colorado, if it's not the hardest state in the United States to do sales tax in, it's one of the hardest.
Is that right?
Yes. So I'll give you a couple of neighbor examples.
Okay.
Utah. I'm from Utah. I moved here 25 years ago. In Utah, if I opened a business like ours, I'd get 1 license. I'd remit to 1 point. So I'd have 1 sales tax license. It would cover the whole state. I would track my sales by location, and I would report them to the state by location. So the state would remit tax from me to all the local entities. But I'm submitting 1 return, 1 check, or 1 ACH payment, and I'm subject to 1 set of rules and inspection from 1 point. Now, take that to Colorado and multiply the simplicity of Utah by 70 times. We're that much more complex than a state like Utah. I was in a meeting with a city mayor. I've met with a lot of mayors as we've gone through this process, and we were meeting with the mayor and his leadership team and the finance director, who had relocated to Colorado from California. Said, oh yeah, California is way simpler than Colorado when it comes to sales tax. Well, anytime you say California is simpler than Colorado,
there's a red flag.
There's a red flag. We have a problem. So we have a sales tax system that is a significant burden on business, and frankly, we think causes perhaps even an under collection and underreporting of sales tax, because there are a lot of businesses who they don't cheat because they're cheaters. They just don't know what the...
How could you possibly keep up with all of these regulations and rules and everything that shifts from city to city, right? So it'd be really hard to pin it down.
It's hard to pin it down, and if you're a small business with a few employees, you look and say, gosh, we'll do the best we can in the city we're located in, and all these other cities...
yeah, that would very burdensome.
Very burdensome.
So what? How do you even start to fix this? So you have every city, every county, and it's not even city, as you said, it's not even zip code. It's every little location. How can you possibly filter that down and get it back to one? Because almost any other state, right, has one.
Most other states have one. Most other states are far simpler than Colorado. There's just a few states that have the multi-jurisdictional licensure requirements that we have here. So it's a burden on business. We think it's a detractor from business moving here or expanding here.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
Because of the challenge and difficulty.
Does that then make it does it make Colorado less attractive to a business that maybe is I don't know, a national chain or something that would open a store here, but then they see the sales tax deal and it wouldn't fly?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, could be that. It could be...
Or they know they have to hire like 2 or 3 people for just that location to handle the taxes.
The cost of doing business here will be higher.
Interesting.
No question about it, because of the burden of compliance with our sales tax system. Well, that then takes us on to how did we get all of this started?
Yeah.
My first individual involvement was the South Metro Chamber asked for some business recommendations to take to the Colorado legislature, then Senate President actually Brandon Schaefer, who wanted to sponsor. He was the Democrat president of the state Senate, and he wanted to sponsor some pro-business legislation. So the South Metro Chamber, which is one of the 4 largest chambers in the state, solicited white papers from members. I wrote a white paper on let's fix our sales tax system.
Okay.
And I outlined the problem, I outlined the fix, and had a meeting with President Schaefer, and he was excited, thought, wow, this is great, and had me meet with the Senate Legislative Council, and I walked him through the system and how we would fix it. He started doing some research, and he came back to me and said, there isn't a legislative fix because the sales tax system is enabled by constitutional requirements, not by legislative requirements. So it's in our Constitution we have home rule cities, and the rights of home rule cities are specified.
Okay.
And one of those rights is the right to set sales tax rates, licensing, collection, and so on. And so at the time they didn't want to tackle a constitutional issue, which is far more difficult than getting something through the legislature.
Right.
We continued. I would talk to other businesses, and they would share my pain. One of them, actually,
Right.
an early discussion I had was with Jake Jabs, the owner of American Furniture
Right.
Warehouse. And Jake said to me, Paul, I've been fighting this for 40 years.
Wow.
And I said, Jake, have you got another fight in you? And
Wow.
he allocated people and resource to get involved in this. And we continued to talk to legislators. We talked to mayors and city council members. We talked to counties. We talked to the governor's office. We talked to the Department of Revenue. And we really wanted to craft the problem and talk about, does it really behoove all of us to have this problem when there's a solution sitting there if we put our collective heads together?
What's the solution?
I'll come to that.
Okay. Yeah. It's a longer story, isn't it?
It's a longer story. So we, one of our key participants is the Colorado Automobile Dealers Association.
Okay.
The auto dealers in Colorado are the largest source of sales tax in the state. Now, just so that you understand the importance of sales tax to municipalities, sales tax is, in virtually every municipality in the state, the largest source of income to the state.
Yes.
So it's a big source of income to the state of Colorado, for example, but they also have income tax and highway taxes and so on.
Sure.
But for a city, sales tax is often 60, 70, 75% of their total revenue. So justifiably, they're very protective of maintaining that revenue stream in their cities. And we recognize that we needed to have a working relationship with cities and towns in the state to make progress on this. So the Colorado Automobile Dealers Association, dealing with massive headaches with sales tax. Every one of their members deals with massive headaches with sales tax. Wanted to be very involved in this, and they became a significant early sponsor when we formed our legal entity. And from that, those first few members, we've grown to where today we have Associated General Contractors represented on our board, and all of their contractor members, Associated Landscape Contractors, Colorado Association of Mechanical and Plumbing Contractors, of course the Colorado Automobile Dealers Association, Colorado Society of CPAs participates with us. Dish Network for a long time participated with us. Food Services of America, large food services company, they provide.
Oh, well, that just dawned on me. So a caterer would fall under that too, because they're providing their services at a location.
At a location, yes. And by the way, if you get into the food rules of what's taxable in food and what's not taxable, you'll go cross-eyed. Your head will start to spin
and just pop right off.
When we talk to our food service members, like Food Services of Corporation of America, there are things in some cities like salt. If it's in a package, is taxable, and if it's not in a package, it's not.
So if it's in a shaker, it's not taxable?
Yes. And so there
there
are all kinds of rules that they're trying to sort through and find out if they're complying.
So I see then what you mean when you said earlier that, there's a lot of businesses that, they try to comply, and if they're not complying, it's not because they're,
it's just so hard to comply.
You couldn't, yeah.
Yes.
How could you possibly keep track of all that?
And consequently, you're subject to frequent audits. If you're a company the size of a car dealer, and they're pretty good sized businesses.
Sure, and then you've got a location in each area. You know, you've got one in Aurora, one in Lakewood, and one in
if you're
down south or wherever.
if you're Summit Ford, who's one of our board members, if you're Summit Ford in Silverthorne, they sell cars not just in Silverthorne, but they sell cars to people from all around the state. So they have licenses all around the state. Because car dealers are large revenue companies, they're frequently audited, and those audits are time-consuming, distracting, and you can always count if an auditor comes in, they're going to find something you've done wrong and you're going to owe more money, which you can't go back to your customers and collect. I'm a small business. I went through 5 audits in 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And each audit entailed 2 people being in my office, or a person being in my office for 2 weeks, and us providing all kinds of information to them, and then they go off, come back with their findings, we dispute the findings, we go back and forth for months, and so each sales tax audit is a multi-month process. Now, if you're American Furniture Warehouse with their size, they're like the Golden Gate Bridge. You know, I learned as a boy that the Golden Gate Bridge is painted 365 days a year. They start at one end and paint it, and then they start over as soon as they finish and paint it again. Well, that's kind of like AFW's life with sales tax.
Yeah, so once you figure out 2017, you're going to be working on 2018.
You're going to get audited by somebody else.
Wow.
So we, again, we felt like there's a better way, and we knew there's better ways because there are states all around us who have better systems. And we talked to people like the Council on State Taxation and, the Tax Foundation. There's a streamlined tax organization in the United States. We had experts from them come in, and they shared with us examples of states all over the country that do it far simpler but have very effective sales tax collection results. By the way, the streamlined sales tax is a national effort to simplify sales tax across the state. Colorado's the only state in the United States that doesn't participate with the streamlined sales tax effort.
Really?
Yes.
And what would it take to do that? Like we mentioned solutions, but that
they would just decide to participate, and they'd participate, and then you have
But wouldn't they have to change everything in every jurisdiction?
You have to start to decide to move in that direction.
Okay. So it couldn't be immediate.
Well, you got to have the will first.
Yes, exactly.
Okay? And so with our coalition, what our coalition enabled us to do was take a diffused effort of business people who would, maybe complain locally or complain to their local legislator. Thousands of businesses representatives came together and said, we can do this better. And we had weight behind us, and we could bring professionals to the table who could help us with this process. And then we became more effective working with the state and the legislature and with the Colorado Municipal League. And, a common part of our life is communicating with them, meeting with them, and so on. So since we have had this thing rolling, we have our ultimate goal, Tammy, is we want to have one sales tax license for business in the state.
Okay.
So if you want to open a business in Colorado and you're going to be selling to people across the state, you need one sales tax license. We'd like to have 1 point to remit that sales tax.
Sure.
We'd like to have common definitions. So if something's, so you know that if salt is defined a certain way in one municipality, it's defined the same way in another municipality. Okay?
Right.
And so we want to have common definitions. So whether something's taxable or not doesn't matter so much. Like food is taxable in some towns, and in others it's not. But we'd like food to be food.
Right, make a decision and have it.
And you get into interesting things in the food world, like a soda pop taxable or not, and those sorts of things. So we want to have common definitions, and we'd ultimately like to have a simplified audit process. We also want to have fairness in appealing adverse rules adverse rulings against businesses.
What does that mean?
So what that means is this: if I mentioned I had 5 audits in 2 years,
Sure.
and in every one of those audits, it was found that we had failed to appropriately collect sales tax. Now, it wasn't tax avoidance in any stretch. It was just trying to figure out the system.
Yeah. Where does it go?
And in some cases, we disagreed with the city in terms of their interpretation of what something that was taxable, and our view was that it wasn't taxable. So, for example, labor is typically not taxable, and there's a lot of labor in my business.
Sure.
Okay, we have a lot of technicians who go out and perform labor at customers' offices. Well, that labor is often sold in a bundled contract.
Okay.
Okay, so the customer buys a service contract that includes labor, supplies, toner, and parts. Well, the toner and parts are clearly taxable, but our view
then
was
the
the labor
wouldn't be.
isn't.
Right.
So we've gone through with cities who've said, well, once you bundle it, it's now taxable. Well, why? It's still labor. And we can separate out and show you the revenue attributable to
And that's
labor.
fine, but then the next audit is going to say,
The next audit says the same thing. Well, so if you dispute that, like we got an adverse ruling multiple times, and we disagreed with the ruling, and but the assessment comes and you're told you owe this much money. So let's say $20,000, which is a lot of money for a small
Sure.
business. You owe $20,000 to one city. And our response was, well, we disagree with your finding. And we would be told something like this: well, sue us.
no. And you can't turn back and say, well, last year it was decided this way, so does that then stand for this year or the next year?
Correct.
So there's no precedent. There's nothing locking it in.
Right.
Interesting.
And in terms of the just sue us, the deck was stacked against the business in pursuing legal process, because if you said, okay, we're going to go litigate to uphold what we think is right, you have to do one of two things. You have to either prepay the disputed sales tax. So let's say you're disputing $20,000. In order to sue, you had to prepay the $20,000. So you had the cost of the
So if you come up with that amount of money,
you have the cost of the assessment, plus you have the cost of the legal process. Excuse me. And then if you didn't do that, you had to post a bond worth 2 times the amount
Oh my goodness.
of the disputed amount. So we talked to businesses who had disputed amounts that were $200,000-$300,000. So they were faced with either pay $200,000 now and sue us, or just pay us the $200,000 and don't sue us.
Over with, right?
Right.
Well, and if this is what you're encountering, either year after year or quarter after quarter, I can see why the goal then is to simplify Colorado sales tax.
Right.
Definitely, and you're not the only business with the exact same burdens, right?
All of us who are companies like ourselves, multi-jurisdictional, have the same problem. But even if you're a single jurisdiction, you still have the appeal process issue. So
1 minute.
We kind of started tackling things this way. The first thing we accomplished was that we, in 2013, and this was before we were formally legally organized, but there were a group of us advocating, we got a bill passed to go around the state and to come up with a database of definitions.
Right, and that should help ease the burden as we go into it deeper. We'll talk more with Paul Archer. He's with the Coalition to Simplify Colorado Sales Tax. We're going to try and get to the bottom of this here on Connect and Collaborate. Stay with us. We're going to look into what the solutions might be to solve some of these burdensome problems. We'll be right back. Thanks so much for staying with us today on Connect and Collaborate. This week we're focusing on tax and fiscal issues that impact businesses in Colorado and a lot of impact on the national level. Today we're talking with Paul Archer from the Coalition to Simplify Colorado Sales Tax. And Paul, we thank you so much for being with us today. And you're doing a great job explaining it's really complicated.
Right.
A rat's nest wouldn't be going too far, right? To say how to undo all of these different rules and regulations that kind of conflict, and they change from city to city. So it's really hard for any business to pin down their how their sales tax is, I guess, quantified, reported, audited, everything.
Correct.
Right. So, as great job explaining all of that in the last segment. What, how are you moving forward? I know you've probably had some accomplishments moving in the right direction now. Tell us about those.
Accomplishments. The first thing we accomplished in terms of a legislative win was in 2013. There was a bill presented to do a study of sales tax definitions around the state. And the purpose of the study was to just bring light to how diverse and complicated sales taxable item definitions are. And so this study looked at every home rule city, and it looked at the state, and it said, and there are thousands of taxable items. And it looked at those taxable items and said, how is this defined in each of the home rule cities and by the state? And what we found from that study was that there was pretty significant, in many taxable items, differences in how they define them. For example, software is defined differently in different places, and what off-the-shelf software is versus custom software. And in some places, off-the-shelf software is taxed, but custom software isn't taxed. Well, what is the difference? So you had it brought focus to, this is really, really complex. And it led to a effort to create standard definitions in the state, which, by the way, it wasn't the first time. This was done back in, I think, the 80s. There was an effort to standardize definition of taxable items. What happens, though, is once you do it one time, the real trick is maintaining those definitions, because every home rule city can change the definition of something by the vote of a city council. And so there was really no clearinghouse to say, wait a minute, software is defined like this, and you just defined it as that. So we recognize that one of the key things to simplifying our system is to define things the same way across the state. So this study brought light to how complex the definitions are and how diverse they are, which fed into creating a list of standardized definitions. And then our coalition and others led home rule cities to agree to participate in the standardized definition initiative. And we now have, I think there's 25 or 30 home rule cities so far that have signed on that they will participate in this collaborative effort to define everything the same way and to keep it standard.
Keep it standard. I'm looking at the document here. It's 15 pages, and it has everything from what is a telecommunications service to how do you define student.
Yep. Yeah.
Even a return in the sales sense, right? So
yes, and I would tell you that's just an extract.
Okay.
That's
so
not,
this isn't the actual what was accomplished.
That's an extract of some things.
Okay.
So that's making progress, and that's really positive. And we've endeavored to work with the Colorado Municipal League towards the simplification of sales tax, and this being one of the key parts. And many of their members are endorsing and supportive of this common definition effort. So that's one of the accomplishments, but still work in process. Another accomplishment, in 2016, we had Senate Bill 36, which was sponsored by Representatives Tracy Kraft-Tharp and John Kaiser in the House, and Tim Neville and Cindy John in the Senate. And that was designed to make it fair if you're going to appeal an adverse audit.
Okay.
And so to remove those requirements that you had to prepay the tax, to remove the requirement that you had to post a bond double the value of the sales tax that they had assessed you. And so companies at that point then would be more likely to defend what they considered their appropriate definition of how they had collected sales tax.
Right.
But it would have another effect. It would have the cities be more collaborative in getting towards a solution, as opposed to saying, well, fine, sue us.
Right.
They realize that the bar is much lower now to be sued.
Well, and that's an incredible burden to come up with that in order
Correct.
to argue your case. Yeah.
Correct. Now, there was, interestingly enough, a case already where a city, and I will not name the guilty, but a city basically said, well, we don't care about Senate Bill 36. We're going to impose the same requirements that used to exist because we never agreed to that in the first place. And that went to court, and that was resoundingly ruled, the city was resoundingly ruled against.
Wow.
So it upheld what Senate Bill 36 did, and we think that that creates a much more fair system for taxpayers and frankly for tax collecting entities, cities and the state and so on.
Right.
In 2017, we passed House Bill 17-1216, sponsored by most of the same sponsors, Representative Kraft-Thorpe and this time Sias. Representative Kaiser had left the Senate. Representative Sias and Kraft-Thorpe and Senators Neville and John sponsored that bill. And by the way, it's bipartisan support. This isn't a Republican or Democrat issue.
Right.
This is a what's right for Colorado issue. And we've enjoyed really good bipartisan support in the legislature. And that bill asked the legislature to create a task force. Excuse me, that bill asked the legislature to create a task force that would recommend a bill that would create a pathway to simplify sales tax licensing and remittance.
Okay.
And would also address the definition issue. So from House Bill 1216 came the Sales and Use Task Simplification Task Force. And that Simplification Task Force was appointed by the governor and other leaders in the legislature, like the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House and so on. And it specified who the members of the task force needed to be. There needed to be a certain number of members of the Colorado Municipal League and a certain number of counties. The State Department of Revenue had to be represented. Tax specialists needed to be on there, and representatives from business. And so this task force came together, had the first meeting in June. It met from June through November. I was appointed by the governor as a representative of business to that task force. And we had, I guess, 5 all-day meetings at the state capitol. And in those all-day meetings, we brought in interested parties from the state and tax experts from around the country. So we listened to the cities express their interest in the sales tax system and how vital the sales tax system is to them. We listened to businesses talk about how complicated it is for them. I mean, again, I mentioned food service.
Right.
You think about a dental practice.
Oh, boy.
For a dental practice, it's a huge complication. For a medical practice, it's a huge complication. These are typically very small businesses
right.
in terms of numbers of employees. So we had dental practice administrators come and testify about how difficult it was. We had food service. We had automobile dealers come and testify. We had a company that does print for pay, Alpha Graphics. He's actually also a member of our board. Came and testified about how difficult it is in his business. And then we had experts from around the country come in, like people from the Council on State Taxation and from the Simplified Sales Tax Initiative that's going on around the country. And they came in and gave us a picture of what's going on around the United States. And they showed us what's happening in different states and how effective their sales tax collection is. And basically, you couldn't argue after listening to any of them that there are a lot of other states that do it way simpler, way more efficiently, and have the same kind of collection outcomes as Colorado gets.
At least as good.
At least
as well.
as good, and often better. So,
right.
So we had those experts. Then we had people come in who have provided software solutions in some of these states, and even there's some software solutions that have been deployed in Colorado but not scaled, to explain what they have done in states where it's more complex. So Louisiana, for example, and in their legal system, they have a system similar to our home rule system, but there are software systems that have been endorsed and supported by the state and by the cities that have worked to dramatically simplify a business's life, and they've used software to do it. So we had the software providers to the state of Louisiana businesses come in and present, and they talked about how they have done it and what they've accomplished. So we had, I guess, about 5 different software companies come and present to the task force. And then the task force crafted a bill to submit to the legislature, and that bill would require the Department of Revenue to issue a request for information for providers to come forward and to say, we can simplify the sales tax system and provide single point of licensure, single point of remittance, a reliable database so that this address is at the right place with the right tax rate and its tax is attributed to the right city. So we had multiple vendors say they would love to reply to such an RFI. So that RFI bill, that's called House Bill 18-1022. It has the same sponsors as our previous bill. It passed the House unanimously last week, and it's gone on to the Senate. So there was no disagreement in the House, which shows total bipartisan support. It's now off to the Senate. We expect similar response from the Senate, and then it'll be incumbent on the Department of Revenue to deliver a request for information to vendors to respond with costs and methods to deliver that kind of new sales tax system to Colorado. So how do we make it all legally happen?
Right, that's the big question.
So that's the big question. So we're confident that the result of the RFI is going to be we're going to have multiple vendors who will say, we could provide for the state of Colorado a portal that would allow a business that does business in Colorado to get and update licenses at one place. So for my business, instead of having to do 43 renewals every year,
oh my goodness,
I would just do that one time a year.
Okay,
and
that
when
sounds
I opened
better.
my business, instead of going around and saying, what are all the cities I'm doing business in, I would just go get one license. So we're confident that the software providers will give us pricing and the methodology to accomplish that. We're confident, because this is done elsewhere, we're confident that those software providers who respond to the RFI will say that same business, automated business products, can now send one check to this portal, or we'll take money through ACH to the portal, and they'll just provide us detail of the cities from where those sales originated, and we'll then disperse the money out to all those cities. And we'll do that within hours of receiving the remittance from the tax
the tax
it
can be automated
collector.
then at that point.
Yes. They will also show us how they'll provide a certified database so that we can say that this address is in this city, in this county, and is subject to this tax. And those 3 things will dramatically simplify what goes on in Colorado. Separate from that RFI will be the common definitions, but that's an initiative that's moving forward, and we want that ultimately merged with this software solution. Now, in order to make it all work, we need a grand bargain, because no home rule city has to participate in it.
How would that work then?
The grand bargain, we'd have to have cities across the state say, yep, we agree, it'll work, we're comfortable, it'll be revenue neutral for us, and frankly, now this will have an interesting outcome in the city, but it will be dramatically more efficient for the cities in
I
their
would
own
imagine.
departments of revenue,
Right.
because they will take something that in a large city you have departments of people dealing with, and that will basically go to this centralized function. So we need a grand bargain where the State Department of Revenue says, we agree, this is the bomb. And cities say, we agree, this will work. And businesses say, hooray, finally. And then we move together, and we would probably need some legislative fiat where we say that this is an issue of statewide concern and everybody needs to play.
Right.
Now, if cities and towns say, or the state says, we don't like it, we don't want to play, then our remaining option, because we know it can be done,
Right.
our remaining option is to get a constitutional amendment. And getting a constitutional amendment is difficult but doable. So there's two paths to a constitutional amendment. One is through a referred initiative that comes through the legislature. So the 2/3 of the legislature would have to certify this as a referred initiative. The governor would authorize it, and then it goes to a vote of the public.
Right.
That's one path to a constitutional amendment. And we believe, frankly, that when citizens understand how crazy complex our sales tax system is, if they have the opportunity to vote on this and they have the opportunity to simplify it and do it in a revenue neutral way, which, as I said earlier, I think will actually be revenue beneficial to the state, then they will, we think citizens across the state, voters will say, well, heck, that's a no-brainer. Let's vote yes. The other pathway to get a constitutional amendment, if we can't get a referred initiative through the legislature, would be a petition drive.
Right.
And that's also doable.
I would think if you got businesses throughout the state to even if your petitions were only from businesses, you should
Right,
be able to
right.
manage it.
Well, if we, for example, created a cohort of chambers of commerce across the state.
Exactly. Yes.
And said, because you got to get into all of the counties in the state, and we said, please deliver this to your members, because you have members in your counties who are dealing with this difficulty. Let's get this on the ballot. So that's the second way to do it. We prefer the grand bargain,
Yes.
and our coalition has worked hard to work collaboratively with the Colorado Municipal League, with the Colorado Department of Revenue, with counties, and we like the grand bargain idea. But if we can't get a grand bargain, in order to get to the ultimate solution, we'll go to the
Exactly.
constitutional amendment. Now that leads me to, how can you listeners help?
Yes, and yeah, let me just point out, we're talking with Paul Archer. He's with the Coalition to Simplify Colorado Sales Tax, which, as you've learned if you're listening today, is very complicated and really does need to be simplified. So yes, how can our listeners, weigh in or find out what they can do to make this happen?
So you can do a couple of things. We have an affiliate opportunity for businesses or even individuals to join us as participants. And for $100 a year, you can join as an affiliate of the Simplify Colorado Sales Tax Coalition.
Okay.
We'll keep you updated on everything that's happening. We'll ask for your involvement. We'll continue to praise you about the challenges of our system, and it's a really, really modest annual cost.
Right. And for that due, should we call it a due or a membership?
Yeah, it's a membership fee.
Then
Yeah.
you get the Coalition to Simplify Colorado Sales Tax really doing the heavy lifting to help
Yes.
make this change.
Now, if you are interested in being more involved, we have room in our bylaws to expand our board. A board seat requires a annual contribution based on the size of your company, and the typical cost of doing that is $1,000 for a small business, $2,500 for trade association, $10,000 for larger businesses, and beyond that for even larger businesses. And we have members in all of those categories. so we would invite you to go to our website, simplifycoloradosalestax.com. May actually be simplifycoloradosalestax.org, but
I have .com. It's simplifycosalestax.com. But if you type in a Simplify Colorado Sales Tax in your search bar, you'll land on it.
Yes, you'll find
it'll
us.
pop right up.
So if you go to simplifycosalestax.com, there is the opportunity to become an affiliate, the opportunity to get more involved. There's information on our board. There's information on what we're doing. You can see what's happening with the government activities and so on. And so we have thousands of businesses currently represented by our board. But if you're a small business and you're thinking, wow, man, sales tax is a huge headache to me, one of the best investments you can make at streamlining your own business is joining with the Coalition to Simplify Colorado Sales Tax for the modest sum of $99 or for even more money, so that we can get this across the finish line. One thing I've learned politically going through this process, Tammy, is it's really, really hard to do anything without money.
Oh yeah, I've
Okay.
learned that, and I would imagine especially in trying to change laws and
Yes, it takes focus and time. It takes professional advisement. It takes relationships, and I have a business to run, and I spend a fair amount of time on this issue, but I spend most of my time taking care of our customers and taking care of our employees. And so we have some really talented people who are helping us with this. And, just having a website costs money.
absolutely.
So we'd encourage businesses to get involved with us, to join the coalition. Call me, Paul Archer, Automated Business Products. You can find us at abpcopy.com. And I'm happy to talk to you about how you can join with us. Call the Colorado Automobile Dealers Association. They'd be happy to talk to you because they're a key
Yes.
participant in this.
And you're connecting all of the right people.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And what if you can point out for me a little bit, if you're successful in simplifying Colorado sales tax, not only would it relieve the burden on business and also the administrative costs, I imagine, for municipalities.
Right.
You could cut some taxes here and there too, because it'd be more efficient.
Possibly, yes. If this turns out to be revenue positive, which I think it will be, there is opportunity to do that. And there's a whole other thing for a completely different program probably, which is this whole issue of items sold on the internet. And
that's a whole other hornet's nest, isn't it?
It's a whole other hornet's nest, which I'll close kind of our session today by saying there's this notion out there that internet transactions are not taxable. That's absolutely false.
Right.
Internet transactions are subject to the same sales tax laws as any other transaction. The issue is enforcement,
Yep.
and enforcement is challenging.
It certainly is, and we've learned that. Thank you, Paul Archer. He's the treasurer with the Coalition to Simplify Colorado Sales Tax, and we thank you so much for explaining this very complicated issue here to our listeners. Thanks so much, Paul.
Thanks for having me.
And thank
My
you
pleasure.
for listening to Connect and Collaborate. All week long, we'll be looking at tax and fiscal issues that impact Colorado, so stick with us. Have a great day.